Howdy guys, someone said something in a comment of a video that was not even mine, and this video is the response. Actually, it's not a rage comment, it's not a correcting the internet thing, but if you have seen Meta of Smash, they made a video about some controller modifications, and in the comments of one of those videos, somebody was talking about how you could create a button to do a instant short hop. So if you know in Smash Ultimate, the short hop happens if you can press the jump button and then release the jump button within 3 frames, or if you press 2 jump buttons at once, and even if you hold them, it'll shortcut to a short hop. So those are the 2 ways to have a short hop, and I got to talk in the comments, and I was challenging myself to figure out if there was a controller modification I could use to have a short hop with just 1 button. So basically you would push this button, and no matter how long you pressed it, it would give you a short hop. And then once you release it and press it again, it would give you a short hop, right? So hopefully Nintendo will one day make that like actually an option, right? They did a good thing in the last patch, is they made a shortcut for 2 jumps equals a short hop, but it would be even better if they had a button so that like just pressing this button would give you a short hop no matter what. So maybe we'll see that in the future. For now though, we're gonna be stuck with controller modifications. So the first thing I wanna mention is that controller modifications are illegal in tournament play. So I'm not actually going to be building this. This is just a schematic I've shown to kind of illustrate a proof of concept. And there's actually 2 ways we can do this. There's a material science way and there's a mechanical way. So I'm going to show you the mechanical way first. And then once you see how convoluted and elegant this is, I'm going to show you the materials way, which I think is much cooler. Okay, so let's get into it. So the first thing, let's talk about the way that controllers work. So if we come over here, sorry, this isn't animated, guys. I'm just putting this together real fast on a drawing platform. So we have a button, right? And you press the button, and let's imagine these are wires going to the controller, and there's a circuit that's not closed. So I haven't taken apart a controller in a long time, but I'm assuming this is how this works. This would accomplish the same thing, right? So you press the button, it now connects these wires, current travels through, and it tells the controller, hey, this button is pressed. Then of course there's a spring. When you let go of the button, it jumps back up. Current's broken. It tells the controller, hey, the button is not pressed. Okay. So our question is, how can we press the button and then it touches, it conducts, and then it immediately tells the controller, hey, it's actually not touching, right? So it's like you press the button with your thumb and then somehow it's not touching. And then when you release the button, it comes up and so forth. Okay. So here is my design. Let me turn on all my arrows. Well, first, let me turn on just the things. Okay, so I'm gonna have some arrows which will refer to the elastic force, right? These are springs here, and an applied force, which is the force coming down from your thumbs. Okay, so this is the button. Let's say it's the Y button or the X button or the jump button, right? And then we have here 2 primary triggers, which will interact with 2 secondary triggers, and then this sensor. So this sensor, as I mentioned, I haven't taken a controller apart in a long time, and that controller was a third-party controller, so it may not be the same way now, but that sensor is kind of like a popper. You know those popper toys? Here's a picture right here, like these things. So it's kind of like a spring like that. That's at least the controller I took apart. So when we have these secondary triggers, they're kind of angled, right? So we don't want it to rip into the plastic, so let's just say that we attach a second piece of plastic or metal right here. So that's how we depress the sensor, right? And the sensor acts the exact same way as this thing over here, right? It goes down, it conducts, it goes up, it doesn't conduct. Okay. So now let's trace the path of the forces. Okay. So the arrows are on. So here's the applied force with the thumbs, right? So you press the button, you push this button down, right? And pushing this down forces this primary trigger down. Okay. This primary trigger actually goes into the secondary trigger. So here's a top view, right? So you can see there's a hole cut out of it. I'll explain this a little bit more in a bit. So, but there's a hole cut out of it, right? So this goes down, it intersects with this hole, which is that black line I've drawn. And then it comes here, and then this is gonna have to slide about like to here, right? And then here's the maximum distance, and it'll have to slide like that, right? To fit through this hole. This, of course, presses into here, which pushes down the sensor and causes the button to register that it's pressed. But this secondary trigger is actually still going down, right? And as soon as it comes here, this will snap back. You see I've drawn the spring is attached to this thing. This will cause it to snap back, right? which suddenly releases the pressure here, and the signal is no longer pressed. So even though this button is still down, it mechanically registers just like one frame of having signal pressed, okay? Then the tricky part is, how do we get this back out? So here's some convoluted drawings. So you can see here's the primary trigger. This black thing is that like stem coming out. And this, I've drawn a gradient to show you that this side is actually lower than this side. So because, is this grouped? It's not grouped. So because this right now is right here, we need it to come out. So there's a hole drawn here, right? And this hole is big enough for this black dot, but not big enough for this bottom base, right? That's why it's kind of drawn like this, so that when it's going down, it'll go into the hole and slide out like this, okay? But when it's coming out, because of this angle right here, you can see I've drawn this angle like this. When it comes back out, it'll actually slide out the side. That'll come up, and then it'll reset when it comes up and go down. So yeah, so that's kind of a lot. I hope you guys can understand what this diagram is trying to show you, but more importantly, this is not the most elegant solution. This is a mechanical solution. There's all tons of pieces. If any of these pieces goes wrong, then you'll have a jam, things can break. So I wouldn't put my faith in something like this working. A better solution is something called a piezoelectric. So piezoelectrics are something that I'm very excited about. This is a material science thing. Well, okay. I was gonna say materials are the future of science and engineering, and that's they're also the past, right? Like technology has run on materials, right? We've got the Stone Age, the Copper Age. I don't know if we had a Copper Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, right? And now in the Silicon Age. So I want to show you a material called the piezoelectric, which I think most people don't know about, and it's really cool. So basically, if you made this thing a piezoelectric and a diode, then you wouldn't need anything. You would just have the button function as normal, and it would transmit exactly this thing. Okay, so here's a two-dimensional drawing of a piezoelectric, and this isn't a real material because it's two-dimensional, but I think I can show you the way that it works. Okay, so imagine we have a group of atoms, right? So we've got this group of atoms, which is 4 negative atoms and 1 positive atom in the center, right? But it's actually not in the center, it's a little bit off center. So you can see here's a length and a width, and you see that this is actually a rectangle, not a square. And let's just imagine that this doesn't sit exactly in the center, right? It's not like, oops. It's not in the center, it's a little bit off center, okay? So this has a result, right? If you remember from high school physics or whatever, that you've got an electrical static potential, which is some constant times the charges and the distance, right? So you can see that actually, since this charge is a different distance from the top to the bottom, there's actually an electrical polarization. Okay, so that just means there's like some electric field, it's not balanced, okay? So I don't wanna confuse you guys with a whole bunch of fancy vocabulary words, right? So basically this atom's off center, which causes like some electric potential to exist, okay? Which is fine, right? It's you know, this material actually does exist in real life, and three-dimensional barium titanated is a good example of this. Actually, quartz exhibits this effect too, not by this mechanism, but by something similar. This is, I think, an easier two-dimensional drawing to illustrate this concept with. Okay, but imagine that this potential is given by like basically the distance between here, right? So if we change the distance, let's imagine that we shrunk the box. So now the relative distance between the top and the bottom has changed. Does that make sense? Or if we stretch it, the same thing has changed, right? So we're changing this r, which is this distance here. So this distance between each of these atoms changes. So basically, if you apply stress by pushing the button with your finger, you compress it. If you have a whole bunch of atoms like this that are all arranged like this, and you press them all together, just this little bitty bit of change will cause an electrical pulse to happen because of the changing electric field, okay? So basically you push it, it'll generate a little pulse, you release it, it'll release the pulse, okay? So that's how you can, and it'll only work while this is changing. So it's not like you push it and then it continuously generates an electric signal. No, you just push it once and it generates a current going one way, then you release it and it generates a current going the other way. Okay, so that's what I'm showing here. And then the problem with this is that if you do that, then you'll get a signal every time you press the button and every time you release it, right? So that's no good. You don't want to be like short hopping and then you let go of the button and suddenly you're burning your double jump. Okay, that's not good. So you just have to have a diode. So a diode is something that is beyond the scope of this video, but basically a diode takes current that's going in two directions and it blocks current going in one direction, right? So that way you could have it so that it would transmit current when you compressed it, but then the reverse current by restoring it to its original shape, that would get blocked. Okay, so hopefully this made sense to you guys. This is a kind of a sciencey video. I am studying my PhD in material science, if you hadn't guessed that already. So hopefully some of you guys found this interesting. If not, then I'll see you in the next video.